All right, let's get back at it, folks, for our last panel of the day. I want to tell you before we go into this panel that in the closing session, there will be an opportunity for some of the questions you've been posing over the day to be answered. And that would follow this panel and be in that last sort of 40 or 45 minutes that we will have. Depending on how our time goes, there may be some opportunity to have some commentary, direct commentary from participants online. We'll see how that goes. All right, the next and last panel of the day, entitled Youth, Technology, and Green Sustainability. And our moderator for this is Bill Zook, who's with the Manitoba chapter of the Canadian Aviation Historical Society. So if I can turn that over to you to manage from this point, Bill.
Thank you. I guess I'm not on screen yet. Hi there, Dan?
You're on, Bill.
Supposed to be on, but I don't see it coming on.
We can see you, Bill.
Right, but when I talk, it doesn't seem to change the screen. Okay, well, let's start anyway. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being a part of the Manitoba Heritage Summit. It was a fascinating group of people that have been together here, and our panel that we're going to be looking at is filled with an exceptional group of people who are educators and activists and innovators who will deal with some of the stories that they have come across and work with in terms of youth and technology and green sustainability. A little bit of context about my background, that I had spent 30 years of my life as an educator and a teacher librarian, and afterwards the chair of the Winnipeg Public Library Board. So I've been working with youth in a variety of different ways. And involvement with educational initiatives has continued through the Air Cadets. I've been an Air Cadet director and working with squadrons in rural as well as urban settings. What we've been also doing at the Canadian Aviation Historical Society is looking at the ideas of how to engage youth in the future, our next generation. And we've been looking at how we mark some of our past, as well as how we sort of work towards the next world to come. In Manitoba, for example, I know that Ralph Gerning had mentioned Garland as a site, which was an aviation site, a kind of a mystical airliner in the middle of the prairies. We have three air museums in Manitoba. We have one in St. Andrews, which is the Canadian Starfighter Museum, which I'm going to be visiting in the next little while. In Brandon has the Commonwealth Air Training Plan Museum. And we are just at work right now in rebuilding the Royal Aviation Museum of Western Canada. But through the museums being just sort of an adjunct to our work, we've also been involved in creating memorials. At Homewood, Manitoba, for example, the first helicopter flew. And now there's a cairn to mark the spot where the helicopter came from. The Mynarski statue at the Vimy Ridge Memorial Park in Winnipeg was a project of ours. In Dauphin, the statue to mark the name Barker, Wing Commander Barker in Dauphin is now commemorated by a statue that's at the town square. So we've done all kinds of other things as well. We've been involved in Winnipeg's Lost Airport, and that, you'd be surprised, is an airport that goes back to the 1920s. Now, I've got a number of people here on the list in the panel that we might want to read up in terms of their bios being posted. But right now I'm going to be calling upon Ross Hiebert. Ross is a specialist in business development and has been in his involvement with On the Spot, kind of a new app that's changing how people will learn about history, is something I'd like to learn about and find out a little bit more about how he's working with the next generation and what successes he's had. Ross is from Vancouver?
I'm from Vancouver, but I was actually born and raised in Portage la Prairie.
Oh my goodness. But are you in
So
Vancouver
I'm a
right
local.
now, coming in?
I am in Vancouver right now. That's right.
Okay. I'll be probably minimally involved in the panel other than just timekeeping. So Ross, you've got 15 minutes.
All right, sure. Well, thanks for having me. It was great for Cindy to extend the invitation, as we've done a lot this last few years with what we are. But for those of you who aren't familiar with On the Spot and what we are, I'll give you a brief Reader's Digest as to what we're all about. Essentially, we're a history app that is changing how people learn about history. It's our intention to facilitate historical literacy and to inspire the new generation of people, from millennials to Gen Z, to learn more about history and to get engaged with history, and to teach them that history is all around them, as opposed to kind of kept in museums or in archives, and to, you know, kind of inspire these young people to explore the world and to explore their environment and to learn more about history. And we do that with our specialized then and now photography. And I'll share my screen and get into the presentation here and show you what we've created. So you should be able to see the screen now. This is the Lionsgate Bridge in Vancouver. What we specialize is in the blended then and now photographs, where we quite literally take an old photograph from the same position, recreate the photograph from the same spot the photographer was standing in, and then quite literally blend the past into the present, and quite literally put the past in the perspective, which creates a visual experience for people that, you know, quite literally reminds them that, you know, there was a time before right now where they happen to be standing and what happened there. So our app maps out all of these locations, and we have cool new features, which I'll tell you about here, that will make these locations interactive, and we just feed them the information in a format that's digestible for those who just kind of want to skim, those who want to dip, or those who want to dive into a lot deeper content. So here, let's see if I can get to, all right. So I want to thank our partners in Manitoba that have quite literally helped us put ourselves and Manitoba on the map. You know, it was courtesy of Cindy's believing in us and seeing what we did, seeing the value in the photographs and how we map out the tours, that has enabled us to kind of include Winnipeg in our app, and that which is growing across Canada. We've recently posted some content from our European cities when we were a travel blog, and we're going to be extending our reach into the UK, starting to market there this fall. So that's very exciting. And if it wasn't for our partners from Manitoba and from the partners that we had kind of on our comeuppance, we wouldn't be at the tipping point we're at now, where currently this year in 2020, we're set to kind of create more content than we have the previous years combined. And next year is looking even brighter with a tremendous amount more opportunity. Oddly, COVID has been good for business for us because it's having a lot more people turn and look for other alternatives. The BIA's cities, they're looking to promote their history and to kind of repurpose some of the, you know, funds that they had set out for, you know, events, the street festivals and so forth. So, you know, that attention is coming our way, and we're deflecting that through by telling more histories. So yeah, I definitely want to thank our partners for helping us come up. Now, getting into the presentation here, it is our intention to be the future of history and how people change. People now use for more information and do Google searching, and they're already out there looking for information to find out what's there. You know, we heard when we talked about the Portage group that joined for Portage Memories and having 4,000 members join up very quickly. It's not surprising. There is quite a huge demand for this, and creating a unique experience and putting history out into the world for people to go out and see and discover is, you know, a very engaging tool that can like quite literally kind of interact and to kind of guide these new people and encourage them to learn more about history. And, you know, these days more and more people have cell phones, mobile phones, even older people have mobile phones. And, you know, having Canadians turn to their mobile devices, we need to put the information in front of where they're going to get it, as less and less people, you know, are even going to the library to seek out information. More and more people are just turning to their devices. Moving on from that, it's, again, our mission to change the way that people interact and just make it accessible and put it there. I joke around about history and your average citizen and how, you know, they are anecdotally interested in history and they want to know more, and they'll gobble up history information. They'll gobble it up if you stand there and tell them like a hungry baby. But, you know, like a hungry baby, they don't necessarily go to the fridge to find, you know, things to kind of feed their own curiosity on its own. So this tool bridges the gap between where information is, where the person is, and quite literally puts it in the palm of their hands, at their fingertips. And this is kind of what we've developed and what our aspiration is to do. Now, I want to introduce some of the features as we've continued to grow, courtesy of the partners, Cindy and Stonewall have helped us kind of come up with. We've now got a Canada-wide reach where we have some content in every province and a lot more content coming. And what this is enabling us to do is to put together a free listing for museums as our user base grows across the country. So this is extended for all of you who are museums out there to reach out to us. Our email address is info@onthissspot. We sent out an email about free museum listings today. If you haven't gotten it, please email and we'll reach out to you. But as our user base across the country grows, we want to encourage people to go to museums. We want to get these babies to go to the fridge and learn some more and herd them into your direction. And having you as listed in our nearby where people can see that they're there when they're going through and they're looking at the historic locations that we have, whether they're connected to a tour, like the Supercharging the City reflects that it shows as a part of a tour, or the spot above as a standalone location, or the museum as an advertisement. We want to be able to kind of show people where these things are, where it is in relation to them, and you know, to be able to find your museums. You know, a lot of them may not even kind of realize that you're there. And, you know, this is putting your listing in where people are looking for history and information and something to do for a day, frankly, and to come out and learn something tangible and real about their community. Another thing that we're doing to increase you know, interest in this is we've created an interactive then and now camera. So in addition to the photos that we already take that are professionally done in a much higher resolution that we sell for prints, we're building in the tool in our camera, in our app, to work as an interactive camera tool that'll enable people to take their own then and now photos. So this is how we can make history interactive. And this is what the kids like. They want to have something that they can do, that they can interact with. They're familiar with how these camera features work through Snapchat and all these other Instagrams and TikToks, and how these camera features work. So they'll want to be able to take a photo. And when they do this, you can see in the top, in the image on the top right, there's an overlay. They can take the picture, change the translucency of it, and then this next version is going to actually even enable them to edit their face in there. They can take themselves and put them in the historical photo, or they can put parts of it around them, just like we do with the picture on the bottom. They could put themselves standing next to these people in the older photo if they wish, and edit that and have a digital souvenir for what they're doing, all while learning about history. And this is a powerful new tool that we'll be having come up, and it'll be available on almost every spot that we have, because it's a simple feature that we've added in. And I mentioned on it a little bit earlier, but the value of then and now photos is, creates a visceral reaction in people that brings the past into perspective. A lot of people, you know, rely on their imagination to imagine the past. This is why I joke around about how flowers, you know, people think flowers were black and white 300 years ago just because of the picture. They can't picture the history having color and being lively and full of life and life in that. And this is why these images, you know, create such a strong reaction in people and really grab their attention. And the ability to be able to create their own while learning about history is a powerful tool that's about to take off. And as we continue to build these in, it creates just more and more of excitement and reason for people to get involved and to want to know more about history. And again, into education, it's our intention for everything that we write to be historically accurate. When and wherever we can, we are going to the communities themselves to learn about their history as part of our partnership packages. We will and do come out there, as we've done to Stonewall, Salmon Arm, Almer, Ontario, all these other small communities. The smallest community we've done a tour in so far is 350 people. We're not limited by population. We're only limited by history, and there's tens of thousands of years of that everywhere, even including natural history. So with our intention, we're creating this as an educational tool for teachers to use as their curriculum and teach kids about their local community. In grade 2 is when they start to learn about their history and their community, and we can write tours for that level for teachers to be able to show kids about their community. And then as those kids grow up, they can continue to reach back to the On the Spot tool as we're expanding worldwide, and they can see where their little city fits in with the whole world as a bigger picture. And this is why we say we're changing how people are going to learn about history in the future, and then show them where they can find more information if they want to, through museums, through archives, through our partners, you know, kind of continue on with what we inspire them to do. Now, Gen Z, I want to talk about Gen Z and millennials very briefly. Gen Zers born up as late as 2010 are the most connected and technologically savvy. These children come up learning how to troubleshoot, figure things out, and make things work, and to kind of look for and develop new tools. They're not afraid of downloading a new app and checking something out to take a look at it. They have no reservations about, you know, trying something new just to see what it looks like and comparing it to other ones. And there's a lot less reluctance. And this is kind of why, you know, these people, they're kind of virtually going to the fridge like the hungry baby for information. It's just that they're turning to their devices in order to do that, which is why it's important for us to be able to appeal to these Gen Zers so that they can continue to be the future of history, and kind of take up where we take off and go from there. Millennials are avid travelers, and they're very strong in cultural tourism. And a lot of millennials, they are interested in experiences. They're drinking craft beers as opposed to Budweiser. They're looking for culture and tourism, and they are more culturally savvy and interested than older generations. And they're genuinely curious how other communities and other people look to learn, and what people do in other communities to adopt some of these things themselves. And, you know, our savvy travelers, they've grown up similar to Gen Zers growing up with technology. They've grown up with the ability to kind of travel the world anywhere they want to for reasonable rates, and with the skills to be able to find this and make this happen. This is how our app started, when Andrew took his education, turned it into a travel blog, and then turned that travel blog into an app that he couldn't find with the content and the quality that we have. So he returned home and created it. And Andrew is a millennial, as is Chris. I'm Gen X, but I'm the old timer in the group. And this is kind of, you know, the future of history and where we're at with this. And On the Spot's appeal, I think I covered a lot of that. You know, our novel, we're in a unique interactive experience. We draw attention to natural historical attractions as opposed to just kind of providing information about it. You know, they're encouraged to actually go there. And we have advertising opportunities for local businesses to engage, and for, you know, for them to, you know, kind of gain a new business and to, you know, be seen as an attraction, as this is also a powerful marketing tool. It will and always will be free to use by Wi-Fi. There will be downloadable map pack codes, but it will always be free and available on any Wi-Fi connection. And yeah, it's millennial owned, operated, and the sky's the limit. We have several competitive advantages. We have, you know, as opposed to creating your own app or, you know, trying to find your own sort of creative experience, we've seen a lot of apps start and fail. And what makes us work is that we have an established user base, and we have content in numerous cities across the country. So there's a lot of reach, and we have world-class photos and content. We have a brand that we represent and an experience that's replicatable from one city to the next, with the skim, dip, dive model and the camera feature and all these kind of unique, cool features that we're coming up with, including AR and virtual technology, virtual tours, which are all closer than you may think, and they're available now. We could probably even do virtual tours in Winnipeg as early as now. And this is our European content, and you know, kind of just more competitive advantage. We're already succeeding. We're in our 5th year. This isn't a pilot project anymore. And you know, we're growing at a rapid rate. Not only are we surviving through the COVID challenge, we're thriving through the COVID challenge, and you know, it's kind of given us a lot more attention due to the challenge that it is. And again, you know, the future of history and the future of our app is going to include, you know, future upgrades with audio, video, event promotions, and you know, content consolidation to have one place for art history, culture, and multicultural history. And you know, we are continuing to provide marketing strategy assistance and emerging technologies from AR and virtual technology and so forth to you know, kind of be the future of history. Now, I'm kind of done now, so I'll mention a couple of the upcoming projects. The Fort McLeod, Lacombe, Castlegar in BC, Vulcan in BC are ones that we're working on right now. And we have a couple of upcoming webinars. On the 6th, we're talking about online marketing and digital fundraising, and this is how to make money online, how to get donations, how to work with your email database, all the things that we as millennials are very comfortable with, and how we've grown our business. You can check your email today. If you don't have an email from us, send us an email at info@onthespot, and we'll get invitations for you for those. And then on the 15th, we're going to talk more in depth about the future of history and more of an introduction to On This Spot and what we're all about. And these times are listed in the upcoming webinars here. So yeah, this is kind of where I'm finished for now, and I'm open to questions and or to move on to another presenter.
Ross, I wonder if you could hold tight at the end of all of the panel presenters, because there's a lot of questions that are coming up right now in chat.
Okay, yeah.
A lot of questions as well. So rather than do questions right now, I'd like to just switch really quickly to the next panelist.
Yeah, I'm happy to stick around and answer questions.
Perfect, absolutely perfect. That's Glen Murray, former mayor of Winnipeg and member of the legislature in Ontario. And his involvement with research, innovation, and technology training is to, I guess, what we'll be looking at and hearing a little bit more about.
Thanks very much, Bill, and hi to everybody.
A disclaimer before you start, Glenn, I worked on one of your campaigns, by the way.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that. I just want to take the context of city building and the intersection between the existing built environment and the future built environment, and how technology and human beings, especially young people, perceive, desire, and work in context with that, how technology comes into the built environment and where it is most easily nested to create wealth. So, and I'm going to talk particularly about the Exchange District in Winnipeg, because I think it's a lot easier to talk about this in a site-specific, to talk about a single location, rather than trying to skip around a bit. But a lot of what I'm saying applies to almost any place that has a large developed area. So Winnipeg developed in relationship to its level of connectivity to other places, almost where cities got built in the Western, in the Midwest in North America from the mid-19th century to the early 20th century, really related more to where railroads went than anywhere else, where all of the other major cities to the east, the Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, and similarly in the United States, were all basically located on rivers, developed through the 17th, 18th, and 19th century, largely because of having been on large navigable waterways, with appropriate infrastructure. But Winnipeg's really the first, often called the first great city of the West and the last great city of the East. It was related to the Red River, but the Red River's navigational abilities were somewhat limited. Certainly one of the first grounded forms of trade that actually was able to sustain itself was goods being hauled over, often sometimes ironically by short haul rail lines, and coming up from essentially Minneapolis-St. Paul up the Red River through steamboats. That never really worked very well for as the volumes grew, and then in 1876, the first rail line arrives from Minneapolis-St. Paul. It's a northern spur line, essentially off the U.S. already established transcontinental rail line. And then in 1883, the transcontinental rail line finally arrives from Eastern Canada, and then in the subsequent years goes off to the coast. If you look at the establishment of the built environment in Winnipeg, you can almost attach it to the first spurt coming from the mid 1770s on, another major spurt in the 1880s. By that point, by the time the turn of the century comes, Winnipeg is the center of 24 different railways, have terminuses and key stations there. And the city is the fastest growing in North America, almost doubling in population in less than a decade. So the entire built environment is from the early phases of the second industrial revolution, the industrial revolution of steam, coal, brick, and garment manufacturing, farm equipment, pre-internal combustion engine, and mid-second industrial revolution buildings. By the end of the First World War, things slow down dramatically, and if you look at the number of buildings built in the city center after 1920, it's pretty scarce until you get into the 1950s, and even then, it never recovers to being the dynamic center it was. But the city's built environment is really the product, at least it's most of its industrial and commercial built environment, of about an 1880 to 1920 explosion. So you have an incredible number of late Victorian and early Edwardian buildings. They're almost all large warehouses, and they're almost all, and the other cluster is 10 to 15 story, very elegant bank towers. The early 20th century technologies get their start in Winnipeg, but they don't get deployed in the way that they did in other cities. So in the first decade of the 20th century, the Union Bank Tower gets built. It has a number of characteristics that are kind of unique. It is the first steel girder construction building in the British Empire, one of the first in North America, way ahead of Toronto or Vancouver, which were the next cities to get them. It is the first building in Canada with high-speed elevators. And it is part of the consortium of businesses that lead to the construction of the St. James pumping station and high pressure water firefighting capacity at a time in the 1905 to 1910 period when there weren't a lot of vehicles that could carry much volume of water or get to fires very quickly. And why is that important? Because after the Chicago fires in the 1870s, and for a long period of time, there are very few high-rises being built in the latter part of the 19th century because fire insurance rates are so outrageous that very few buildings can afford the insurance rates. But what happens in Winnipeg in the first few years of the 20th century is that this high-pressure pumping station and the high pressure, the 12 kilometers of pipes that go right by all of these buildings that get built over 10 stories, gives Winnipeg at that time one of the largest high-rise clusters in North America and this unique introduction of a systemic new technology, because you can afford, because insurance rates drop dramatically in Winnipeg, allowing what we now see, the Confederation Life Building, the Union Bank Tower, which I was mentioning was one of the first, but you start to see the McIntyre Block. By the end of the First World War, 16 skyscrapers, by the definition of the day, are built in Winnipeg. And I say that because the Union Bank Tower demonstrated for the first time in Canada, really the first time in the British North America, there were some American competitors, but not a lot of them, a revolution in second industrial revolution technology. And today, we're at that same point in history, just over a century later, with the same questions and the same challenges and problems. We're now in the third or fourth industrial revolution, where buildings are using geothermal, where buildings have, let's look at some of them. Three of the greenest buildings in the world, and actually what's ranked constantly as the greenest building in the world. So what the Union Bank Tower was in 1905, the Manitoba Hydro building on Portage Avenue is almost its technological equivalent. There was the Union Bank building really had no peer because of those features: curtain walls, high-speed elevators, steel girder construction. The Union Bank Tower has a solar chimney. It's almost entirely off-grid, passive building design. The entire building is built on a platform of technology and smart technology. But it's now 20 years old. It was a project as a condition of selling Winnipeg Hydro to the province to build the greenest building in the world. Right across the street is the Mountain Equipment Co-op, which is the only really almost entirely circular economy building in the world. Means it's zero waste. It was built 96% by waste. Probably, I think, the best heritage restoration applying 21st century technology to 19th century construction is Red River College with the old Commodities Exchange. That has one of the largest photovoltaic arrays in Canada, has passive building design, it has some geothermal, it has green roofs, and integrates 6 historic buildings into a modern building envelope and is unprecedented. Sadly, not one of these technology breakthroughs that are almost all 15 to 20 years old have ever been deployed across the city. And now we move into the next generation where the value add of the new economy is embedded in let me just put it this way. The third and fourth industrial revolution technologies all look for homes in second industrial revolutions, over-engineered and overdeveloped buildings. So I own and run 2 software companies on McDermott Avenue. Why we're in the Merchants Building? Why are we there? Because it's post and beam. It's the exact authentic, historic building with a narrative with beautiful features that you would never see built today. And if we want to attract a dynamic young workforce, we have to be hip, we have to be in the post and beam area. Blockchain can be introduced in the foundational lower levels of any of the large warehouse buildings in the Exchange District. This is an industry, and cryptocurrency and other blockchain secured industries is the fastest growing software sector in the world. Winnipeg is the perfect home for it. We have cold weather. And it's also that these are all high intensity computer processes. They make everything from hemp-based carbon consuming building materials through to currency. Mark Carney, the former governor of the United Kingdom's bank, central bank, and our Bank of Canada pointed out that the most strategic, high growth economic investment and job creating opportunity for Canada in his mind was for Canada to become the leader in the switch from government-backed securities to encrypted currencies, which have almost no risk. The other thing they do is you could heat and cool every building in downtown Winnipeg with the same kind of thermal transfer systems you find in cities like Calgary, because these intensive high-intensity computers give up so much heat, and that we already have from the old steam plant days, all the pipes you need within downtown Winnipeg to transfer warm air, hot air in this case, between buildings, that in blockchain intensive computing could replace what the old steam plant on Waterfront Drive used to do as far as heating and cooling. You could also be supplying to rural Manitoba the means of drying hemp for much of the modern carbon absorbing technology. So there's a company that's just negotiating with the city right now to produce hemp block basing building materials with smart technology embedded in them, but what they need is intensive drying. So I'm just giving that sort of the intersection of computing, thermal heating, utilities, building material construction, using an existing built environment. We have to stop thinking of heritage buildings as things we have to save or liabilities. We have to stop thinking about them in terms of just simply heritage grants. We have to understand that the entire third and fourth industrial revolution, corporations and companies, and the kinds of buildings that people want to live in, where we're erasing the walls between the classroom, the workplace, and the home, are those very buildings. And no city in Canada has better quality architecture, better clustered architecture, with the connective, with the ability to repurpose pipes and technology to do that. And the problem that I have with the way that we think about heritage in the city of Winnipeg and in many, many cities across the country is that we don't understand that the most important assets for building the new technology and the green economy are the repurposing of our buildings. Or as Jane Jacobs, my dear friend and longtime collaborator before she died, said, city building is essentially finding new purposes for old buildings. But every single technology, every single application works better in these beautiful old industrial and banking buildings or cost effectively. And we are building crap. Portage Place, which is sucking up money, for example, is a badly designed building. Most of our modern buildings are energy pigs. They leak, they're not efficient, and they're not places that most young people want to work. And much of our residential development is pretty banal and generic. So restoring our buildings and bringing the third and fourth industrial revolution companies and opportunities into second industrial revolution buildings, starting in our city center, I think is really got to be the centerpiece of building Manitoba and Winnipeg's economy. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks very much, Bill.
Thank you. Have you also worked with North Forge in any regard?
Yeah, we work with them. We have a parent company. We have a company called Creative Applications for Sustainable Technology. We have between the companies, about 50 employees. We have 44,000 customers in the United States. No one in Canada invests or purchases smart technology companies. Almost 30 to 40 IT software clean tech companies in downtown Winnipeg, most of which are embedded in historic buildings in the Exchange District, would probably all tell you that, well, we get good help from North Forge and the Manitoba Accelerator Center. The problem is that no one in Canada buys our products. And there is no strategy. No one seems to understand why this industry loves authentic, historic post and beam buildings. For example, we have a zero waste technology that is used by 55 cities in the United States. The Environmental Protection Agency is their gold standard. They use it. And 18 states is a technology that we have, a software that turns a waste stream into a green supply chain, repurposing materials back into the economy. One of my business partners was the guy who started the Habitat Restore to try to get people to understand that carting buildings off to dumps is one of the stupidest things you can do. And the Restore is very, very successful at repurposing building materials. So this idea of a circular economy, which is linked to the clean tech and software economy, all finds its home in the Exchange District, which is also because they believe in the repurposing of existing assets. We have no economic development strategy. For the first time in 20 years, and the only time in the modern history of the city, we don't even have a downtown development plan. We've scrapped and undone almost all of the downtown incentives that were in place for heritage buildings, they've all been dismantled. And they weren't primarily heritage building incentive programs. They were buildings to reinvest 21st century technology in existing buildings. And when they were dismantled, they created a great deal of difficulty for building owners to raise the capital they need to make the improvements in the existing buildings and to get the 21st century infrastructure that they need on top of that to attract and retain this new generation of businesses that are there. So yeah, it's a challenge. Our companies are there also because the street level retail, patios, availability of interesting residential areas are really important. People who work in the IT, the millennials and earlier generations, don't want to be out by a Walmart and an Applebee's in a boring office building in a suburban parking lot like they are in so much of Canadian cities. They want to be in the middle of the downtown. And the last thing I'll say, and then I'll shut up about this, is Red River College, since the city did its deal, because the city co-developed Red River's downtown college almost without the province, because we had such a hard time convincing the province of the need to move colleges and universities downtown. Immediately upon opening classes at Red River, they had a 30% higher enrollment or better in almost every single course offered at the downtown campus on Princess Street compared to at their peripheral suburban campus. So downtown's locations and buildings matter, and they matter very heavily to millennials. And you see that in where they want to live and in the authenticity and aesthetic of a repurposed industrial environment.
Well, you've given us a real primer on repurposing and green sustainability. Thank you very much. We'd like to call on Ross Metcalfe. Ross is an educator, a retired high school teacher, principal and superintendent at Interlake School Division.
Okay, I'm on. All right. Well, I'm very interested in the presentations. I just, X, Y, and all the generations. I'm a baby boomer. Let's throw that out there. With an old classroom perspective as an old classroom teacher. So I'll start off by saying it's with great pride that as a member of the Manitoba Historical Society Council, I finally get to see a conference, albeit online, of all the Manitoba historical organizations, along with all levels of government, working together to preserve Manitoba history. Thank you for all of you who made this happen, and I'll look forward to the next one, hopefully next year. Well, my 2020 challenge is for you is how do we engage today's youth in Manitoba history? I'm asked that at all levels of organizations I'm in all the time. How do we get the youth interested in what we do? In talking to James Kostachuk, and he's a teacher from Portage Collegiate, you met him earlier on today. He's also the past president of the Manitoba Historical Society. He reminded me of a university professor we both had at the University of Manitoba, Ken Osborne. Ken told us over 40 years ago in my case, probably less for Mr. Kostachuk, he said, teach history as a mystery, something to be solved. Make history real and relevant. I always tried to remember that. The days of listing endless dates and facts for memorization will not work for today's smartphone, techno-savvy generation. Innovative teachers like James and Peter Bjornson, the former Minister of Education, took their students out of the classroom and actually dug World War I style trenches in nearby farmers' fields, taught them the ways of World War I. In this way, the students were completely engaged. It also allowed for cross-curricular teaching. How many hours would it take to dig a trench? A soldier will dig a trench in 6 hours. You dug for 20 minutes. Could you do it for 6 hours, for 6 months straight? All those variables came into play. Cross-curricular teaching. That's how we can make it more interesting. My own high school success story, hopefully I had more than one, but I do remember one with great fondness, was teaching grade 11 history in the 70s, and I had to convince my principal, Bernie Hendricks at Stonewall Collegiate, to shut the school down for 2 days while we turned the gymnasium into a youth parliament. Each student represented one member of the Legislative Assembly. Former grade 11 students came back. I had sent them into the city for the youth parliament. They came back and acted as my cabinet ministers and, of course, the Speaker of the House, which required great talent at the time. The students wrote bills as assignments and had to speak to each bill at least twice. This became something that the students really looked forward to each year. It was a highlight of my teaching career for me. With good admin support, this was an excellent strategy to engage grade 11 classroom history students. So to all you teachers out there and all you administrators out there, you need to support your teachers in the classroom to be a little bit on the innovative and creative side. Here's an example of what I think was a lost opportunity for one school. My son Tyler, when he was in grade 7, now he's 36 years old and teaches high school, he won a French public speaking competition. His speech was about the antics of a World War II fighter pilot. A short while later at Parent-Teacher Day, I was asked by some of his teachers which World War II aviation history books my son had read for the background of his story. I informed them that his story did not come from reading books, but rather from spending several days on a road trip to a vintage motor rally with Wing Commander fighter pilot Irv Lowen, who flew Spitfires in England and Hurricanes in North Africa. Here is the catch. Mr. Lowen lived 3 blocks from my son's high school. To me, the school lost a valuable historical opportunity by not inviting him to present or discuss his time in history with impressionable junior high students. Not everything can be Googled. Sometimes you need to get out and meet the real people. We used to say as educators, we're all teachers of English. I would like to think that educators of today are all teachers of history. Many of you out there are movers and shakers of your local museum or your historical society in small towns and villages all over Manitoba. I ask you, what have you done lately to attract the younger generation to your organization? In the past, and even today, most of the historical societies and museums are run by seniors. Thank goodness for those volunteers. But we need to find ways to get younger people involved in our historical preservation activities, or these organizations are going to have trouble surviving. We are already seeing the start of that. Now that I'm retired, I'm also the president of the Antique Motorcycle Club of America, which has 12,000 members, the largest vintage motorcycle club of its kind. And we have the same challenge. One way we came up with to address this, and I just throw these out as examples, was by the creation of a virtual membership for youth ages 16 and under. It doesn't cost the organization much money. It comes with a virtual magazine and a virtual membership card. And in just a few months, we have attracted hundreds of new members who we hope will carry the torch of preserving the history of vintage motorcycles. I bought one for my 4-year-old granddaughter last year. One dad bought a membership for his 8-hour-old baby while he was still at the hospital. Now, if that isn't building capacity in future generations, I don't know what is. Why not invite some younger members to a meeting and have them do a presentation on what interests them in your community? When I was 19 years old, my mentor was Lieutenant Colonel Bentley, Order of the British Empire, beach commander at Juno Beach for D-Day. He treated me as an equal, and because of him, I developed a strong love of the rich history of Manitoba motorcycling, leading me to create the Antique Motorcycle Club of Manitoba back in 1977, and still growing strong today with 150 plus members. First person to buy a membership to that organization, Lieutenant Colonel Bentley. Where do you live? Winchester Street, St. James. My point is that we need older folks to actively seek out and welcome the younger generation into their groups. Get them involved. It's a powerful way to preserve Manitoba history and its many devoted organizations. Thank you.
Thanks, Ross. And can you stick around for some questions at the end as well?
Oh, absolutely. I got nowhere to go. It's $4.50 an hour. I'll sit here all night.
You got it.
Parking, that is.
Gord, I think James Dykstra is on a video or on another media.
Yes. Say yes. Yes. Say yes. Yes.
Sorry?
Say yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
James's involvement is with the Red River Heritage Fair and as a teacher as well.
Our fair end up being the future museum patrons. They end up session of the day. Hopefully you're still alert and active. I'm James Dykstra. I'm working on this recording from home. So, at home, there's a few things wrong. You might hear some birds chirping in the background. Our budgies Cucumber and Barang, one's green, one's white. So please excuse the noise and we'll try to get down to business. I've been a volunteer with the Red River Heritage Fair for a very long time, 16, 17 years, something like that, about as long as I've been married, so which wasn't a long time. And I like to describe the heritage fairs as Winnipeg's best kept secret, because even though there have been heritage fairs in Winnipeg for 27 years, since 1993, no one seems to have heard about them. So, what is a heritage fair? What are we doing? At the risk of offending someone, I like to describe heritage fairs as like a science fair for social studies, only more fun. And okay, I know that's maybe not fair, but we try to keep our fair short and snappy. We have everything in one day in May. There's about 200 to 250 kids presenting projects on some part of Canadian history and heritage. We judge the projects. We send the kids off to workshops on heritage-themed topics. We send them through a scavenger hunt with heritage-themed displays. And when it's all done, we award prizes to some of the incredible projects there. It's hard to pick some projects from among all the incredible projects, but anyway. Registration starts at 8 a.m., and we've generally got the place cleaned up by 8 p.m. So we work with 20 to 25 schools scattered between Carman in the south and Flin Flon in the north. And therefore, communication has always been a challenge. We're scattered over quite a few school divisions, 7 or 8, something like that. Years ago, we started out by faxing information to the schools that were participating. And we received information back in the mail, snail mail, which was tedious to say the least since we had to recopy a whole lot of the material they sent to us. Since then, we've moved to communications via email. We don't actually have an office, so we can't exactly, give them our phone number. And with Google Docs, we've streamlined registration a whole lot. And most recently, we've ended up with Permission Click, which helps us with the registrations and allows us to accept electronic forms of payment. So trying to keep the fair going has always been a challenge. Unlike science fairs, heritage fairs don't tend to receive the support of an entire school, just individual teachers. That tends to mean that if one teacher is doing it and they retire or they move to a different school, the following year, that school is not doing heritage fairs anymore. And that makes recruiting schools a constant challenge for us. And I suspect it's challenging because teachers, one, they tend to see heritage fairs as more work they have to do. It shouldn't be that way if it's done properly, but that's the perception. And two, if they're going to do more work, then shouldn't it be something worthwhile, like a science fair? After all, what kind of jobs can you get in heritage? And I know I'm preaching to the choir there, but for us at the Heritage Fair, that's probably our single biggest problem. Heritage generally is not valued by society. But we do draw people in. And generally, we do that by luring them into the fair for the first time. For example, we talked to one woman with Manitoba Education probably dozens of times over the years. And finally, we told her again and again, we told her, you got to come. It's this, it's like this. And finally, she did come. And her response was, why didn't you guys tell me it was like this? Well, we tried to, but it's tough getting a sense for 200 kids excited about Canadian heritage. You really have to be there in order to absorb the full impact. There's got to be a way to take that excitement that you find, put it in a bottle, and send it to all the teachers in the province. There's plenty of kids out there who want to do something related to history and heritage. Our problem has always been getting the adults to see the value in it. The adults have to guide them in historical thinking, to help them hunt for primary sources, and probably most important, they have to share the belief that knowing who we are and how we got there is as valuable as any science or engineering skills. So one other area that is hard for us is innovation. It's not hard for the fair so much as it is for the teachers who send kids to the fair. We've been urging teachers for years to try something new. History isn't just written in boring history books or boring textbooks or boring lectures that teachers like to give. History is found in primary sources. History is found in magazines and newspapers. It's told in essays and backboards, but it's also told in podcasts and in videos. It's told in comic books, graphic novels, and it's told in artwork. We've tried all these at times, encouraging people to do these things. And we've even seen some really good kids projects come to the fair. But in general, teachers want their kids to tell their topics in essays and on backboards. In schools, they like to talk about multiple intelligences. We learn in different ways. Some people learn by reading and they write good essays. Some learn visually and they make beautiful paintings. Some can't sit still, and so making videos works well for them. We're trying to make space for everyone at the fair, for different learners, for different ways to tell history. Ironically, the teachers often can't escape their own history. They teach the way they were taught, and they want the kids to create the projects with backboards and essays. Younger teachers are joining our planning committee, and they're coming into the schools, and this helps us a lot. But the way they're learning to teach isn't the way I was taught to teach. It's a lot more innovative. It realizes that communicating ideas can be done in so many ways other than with just an essay. Change will come, but maybe not yet today. For us, as I suspect for anybody who's listening to this and is involved with heritage, economics have always been a problem. Though we've done okay, we've kept afloat, and we're doing okay. Our problem year after year is that potential funders generally want to fund special projects to which they can attach their names as sponsors. For example, they put a logo on some T-shirts that they fund for the kids, and I can understand why they do that. That makes sense. But the mundane running of a fair, such as lunches for the judges or the rental of the building space and things like that, is something that most groups don't want to fund because, you rent a building. How do you put a name on that? Money is probably the single biggest reason why there are a lot fewer heritage fairs today than there were about 10 years ago. About 10 years ago, there was 200-ish fairs. Now there's about 75. It costs money to run a fair. One thing we've done really well in, which has worked out very nicely for us, are collaborations. The St. Boniface Museum, the Manitoba Museum, Canada's History, to name only a few, have been strong partners of ours for years. They've helped us out with all kinds of things. Without the aid of these and other groups, there never would have been a Red River Heritage Fair. Frustratingly, alliances shift, as the personnel change at these various groups, and sometimes we lose one or two or some of them. They are great reminders, working with all these groups, that we're all in this together. As much as we talk about the heritage of groups or the heritage of a nation at our fair, we couldn't do what we're doing without groups working on it together. One thing that we really tried for as a fair is to include people who are obviously different, especially people with different learning styles. Over the years, we've gotten requests from teachers, is it okay if I bring this child? He's deaf. Is it okay if we bring this girl? She has autism. Is it okay if we take this boy? He's in a wheelchair. If there's a way we can accommodate this request, we do, because it matters that everyone in our society belongs. It feels like they belong. And Canada's heritage is theirs as well as ours. When we talk to the teachers, we do caution them that if they're at the fair to win prizes, then that particular child's handicap may get in the way of that goal. But if they're there to learn, if they're there to grow, if they're there to celebrate cool stories about our country, and if they're there to celebrate people's cool accomplishments, including their own, they're in the right place. So for now, what do? That's what our fair is about. Now moving forward, we have a short-term problem that you guys are undoubtedly all aware of. There's a pandemic going on. So how does a fair of 250 kids, 24 volunteer organizers, 50 to 75 judges, how do we do social distancing? The answer is, unfortunately, that we probably don't, at least not for 2021. That answer kind of kills us, because the volunteers at our fair are passionate people, and we're not doing this just because heritage is important, but we're doing it also because we think it's fun. Heritage is fun. So we're batting ideas around about how we can do a virtual fair of some kind. It would likely involve the kids submitting videos or podcasts, and we'd post them on the web. There'd be voting, and then we'd ask other students to vote on them. There'd likely be an adult panel of some kind to judge the projects too, in case someone told his friends to vote for his video and he got lots and lots of votes and it wasn't really that good. But yeah, that wouldn't happen, would it? But anyway, right now we don't know if this would work, but these are weird times and we need to innovate. The longer term problem is obviously building support for the Red River Heritage Fair. And that happens one conversation at a time. Nearly every time we can get someone in the door to take a look at the fair, they're hooked. We reel them in one by one, and over the years, we've caught thousands of people this way. Unfortunately, there's about 700,000 people in Winnipeg, and we need to convince them all. So we've got a few more to convince. However, people in Winnipeg have been working on heritage fairs for more than 27 years, and we haven't given up. So we're patient people. We will get their attention. We will get there, even if it takes another few decades. So the next time we have a fair, which is probably in 2022, come by, take a look. We can't get the kids engaged without help. We need all kinds of logistical support. We need prizes. We need heritage-themed displays. We need endless enthusiastic volunteers. And though we need your help to carry off the Heritage Fair, you'll end up helping yourselves. The kids who come to our fair end up being the future museum patrons. They end up being teachers, politicians, business people, all kinds of others who know that heritage really matters. These are the kinds of people your organization needs. So come on out and help us build them.
Thanks a lot, James. James, I think perhaps Ross Hiebert can help you with that Heritage Fair idea of yours. And Ross, As a principal and a superintendent, or former principal and former superintendent, what did you do to encourage that creative teacher in your midst?
You know what? Number one, you hire the best people, because if you hire good teachers as a superintendent, you don't have a lot of problems. Number one, you put your resources in supporting the classroom teacher, because if it's good teaching, you won't have problems in the classroom. They say that teaching is the second most private act in human society, and it probably is. I would support the teachers in their own professional growth beyond the usual professional developed situations. I'm happy to say we had heritage fairs and certainly had science fairs, but if you support the teachers in a school division and give them opportunities to be creative, and more importantly, hire the right leadership team of administrators that give some of the teachers an opportunity to think outside the box. Sometimes, I mean, hey, there's still a grade 12 pre-cal class, and as long as we have standardized tests, you've got to cover the material. But there's a lot of latitude in that grade 9 Canadian History Studies, grade 11 Canadian History Studies. And like Bjornson and Kosachuk, go out and dig some trenches. Go out and do something a little different. Bring history real. And I guess my point in some of those other things is not only support the teachers, but the teachers need who's in your community that you don't know is 3 blocks down the road. Reach out, run something, have a tea. Have a heritage tea with people that have done some heritage things in your community. And not just Winnipeg, it can be from Flin Flon and everywhere in between, because there are tremendous stories of Manitobans that have yet to be told.
Ross Hiebert, are you still online?
Yes, I'm still here.
Terrific. My wife and I just took in Imagine, the Van Gogh exhibit that was here in Winnipeg. And it's an immersive kind of environment that you step into the paintings. Is there any thought of something that is like that for on this spot?
Oh my goodness, yes. We have so many ideas and so many things that we're developing that it's exciting. It wakes me up early in the morning. I have no need for an alarm clock. I just get up and get to work. There's so much cool stuff coming, like including that and virtual tech, virtual tours, augmented reality. You know, like the thing is that with us, with what we're doing, and within the tech world, there is the leading edge of technology and the bleeding edge of technology. The bleeding edge is what you bleed is money in developing new technology. And, you know, as we've grown, it was our initiative to start out with our core competency, which is what we're best at. And that is creating a good app, which our talented Chris has created the world's best history app with On the Spot. And with Andrew's, you know, storytelling methods and, you know, photography. You know, these are things that we could do at a reasonable expense, at a reasonable cost, which is how we were able to get the partners that we do to make it less cost restrictive for them by having it more accessible, you know, so that small cities, even like Stonewall, can work with us. And then, you know, as we continue to build from there, what we have is a brand new version of the app that has modules and things that we can already add these new technologies on. And we're starting to hire developers to develop them right now. We just hired someone yesterday.
I have to talk to you about our new aviation museum. I worked in the Western Canada Aviation Museum as an educational consultant. And at the time we were actually pioneering a 360-degree camera inside the cockpits. The aircraft were static, but nobody could get inside. That was really not allowed, and they were often sealed. But the 360 camera actually got you inside, and you could revolve it around to actually see inside an aircraft on display.
Bill, it sounds fascinating. I wonder if I could ask you to kind of do a wrap on your panel, and so that we can move along.
Yeah, I think after you know, hearing from 4 really exciting projects and activities here, I think we've put a cap to the day. It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill, to those last 4 panelists. It has indeed been a really good way to end our panel experiences today. We're not